What's up, everybody? Coast to Coast podcast coming at you here. I'm Joey Powell for InsideCarolina.com, and want to give you a heads up. We actually had a really, really good plan to talk with both Eric Bossi, the National Basketball Director for 24/7, and Travis Branham, the National Recruiting Analyst for 24/7, about UNC's 24 class and some guys they've offered in the 25 class after the first two live periods. We were able to talk with Travis. It was a great segment. I think you guys will find it really interesting. But I want to give you a heads up. We were planning to do the same thing with Eric to talk to some other members of that class that he saw because he and Travis were splitting duties during the live periods and they both got to see different players. Unfortunately, Eric had some emergencies come up and was unable to record with us on two different occasions. So we're just going to go ahead and get this into your feeds normally. Hopefully, we can talk to Eric Bossi sometime in the very near future. He's done the show with us before. We know he'll be back. But wanted to give you guys kind of an idea of what we thought the original plan for this show was going to be, and hope that you'll understand. Things happen, right? Either way, one of the things that I think is most important is that we appreciate you guys being here, and also to tell you that Johnny T-Shirt's still sponsoring the show, even though it didn't go the way we wanted it to go. They are still the reliable sponsors of Inside Carolina and of Coast to Coast Podcast. Check them out on East Franklin Street or JohnnyT-Shirt.com. But with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and throw it to the segment that we did record with Travis Branham. Sean Moran and Sherrell McMillan join me as always, and we talk with Travis Branham quite a bit about, to name a few, Drake Powell, Elliot Cadeau, Isaiah Harwell, Darren Peterson, and just kind of some overall thoughts that he had in seeing these guys play in the first two live periods. I think you're going to enjoy it, specifically what he was saying about Drake Powell and Elliot Cadeau. So I hope you enjoy it. Until next time, we'll be back on the next scheduled episode of the Coast to Coast podcast. We appreciate you guys listening. If you have not, make sure you subscribe and rate and review us. We appreciate all that stuff for you. But special shout out to you for being here and to John Siegley for producing. Hope you enjoyed this segment we did. Sean Moran, Sherrell McMillan, yours truly, and Travis Branham. What's up, everybody? Coast to Coast podcast coming at you. Special edition. If you know anything about these, it's a big deal if we bring a guest in. And props to Sherrell for setting this up. We've got National Recruiting Analyst for 24/7 Sports, our friends. We're part of the 24/7 network. So whenever we get to talk to one of their brainiacs that sees all of the action and knows how to break down a high school player's game, we want to do it. And shout out to Sherrell for bringing on our guy Travis Branham. Travis, how you living, dude?
I'm living well. Trying to just come down from the fatigue of the April live periods and Final Four and everything else, but doing well, man.
Well, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you, is because you've laid eyes on a lot of prospects, both committed and otherwise, that are in UNC's orbit right now over the last couple of weekends. And first things first, I'm going to go straight to straight for the jugular here. Who did you see from UNC's committed class of 24 that jumped out at you the most? And then I'll dive into, Sherrell and I will work into each individual prospect here in a second, but I want to, who jumped out at you the most, or at least made the biggest improvement from the last time you saw them?
The biggest improvement's not even close, and I don't even mean it from a North Carolina perspective, but honestly, potentially from an entire national perspective, and that's Drake Powell. For those that have been on the Inside Carolina boards, I've been coming in on there for about the last 4 or 5 months talking about Drake Powell. I saw him at John Wall Invitational back in December, and man, did he improve in just a 6-7 month span. Elite athlete, absolutely elite athlete. And he plays with an incredibly high motor. Elite defender. I mean, it's one of those guys that every time I see him on that end of the court, he just impresses me with how engaged and how hard he's playing and just how reactive he is to plays, both on and off the ball. And then offensively, he's made incredible strides. Go back when I first saw him a year ago at John Wall Invitational, but back in 2020, I guess that was 2021. Offensively, didn't really know what he did. Me and Sherrell, I remember talking about it after, I guess that week, what I saw when it was one of those guys that we were like, this could be a potential North Carolina prospect. But at that time, straight line driver, not a very good shooter at all from three. But in that time since then, now, honestly, I have a hard time calling him a below average shooter at this point. He is streaky, no doubt about that. But in front of me, at least at EYBL last week in the first live period, he hit 3 threes, including a step back. He's changing direction. He's a very smart and willing passer. Ball never sticks in his hand. So not only just from a North Carolina basketball perspective, but across the entire country, Drake Powell has skyrocketed, at least up my personal board. And I know on 24/7, he skyrocketed up into the top 20. And I believe we have him as a 5-star. I mean, I would have to go back and look, but I think we got him as a 5-star now. But after that viewing at the UIBL, I'm not only more confident in it, but when I saw him at John Wall, I thought, hey, this could be a top 10 pick. But it's one of those things you got to be a little cautious. You don't want to jump the gun too quick. But seeing him at UIBL it only reassured me of that.
Yeah, Travis Branham from 24/7 Sports is joining us tonight. Travis got a chance to lay eyes on a lot of the guys at the EYBL circuit, specifically, as he mentioned earlier, Drake Powell. I think one of the big things about Drake, Travis, is that he plays on a team where up until this year he really wasn't an option, right? He was kind of a third guy, and Sherrell's talked about it before, in that, CP3, he didn't really have to do much. He was kind of a Swiss Army knife type player. When a guy grows into himself and seems to start finding new levels for his skill set, and in Drake's case, becoming a shooter, does he look comfortable doing it, or does it look like something like that maybe he's not quite into? And is it something that he looks like he's been doing this his whole career?
I wouldn't say it looks like he's been doing it his whole career, because it's still a learning curve, but he looks very comfortable and confident shooting the basketball right now. I actually believe Sherrell was on the same court as I was when I watched him at EYBL. And I mean, the shot that really stood out to me was that step back again. It wasn't even him doing it off the dribble. I believe, if I can remember correctly, it was a transition play. Guy drove it into the paint, kicked it back to him, and all in one motion, he catches while he's pulling back, clears easy 5-6 feet of separation, 2 feet beyond the 3-point line, and just rises. No hesitation, no thought about it, and drains it. So it's that kind of stuff. And you can tell he's looking a lot more comfortable off 1-2 dribble pull-ups. So the mechanically and the touch, it's coming along. And that's where I come from it doesn't look like this has been a lifelong thing. There's just some players out there. Another Carolina native, Austin Swartz. You watch him shoot the basketball, and that is a natural just gift that he has. Not many people have that touch. It just comes off so clean and so pure. Junie Mobley, kid who's committed to Ohio State. Just two guys that just jump off the page when it comes off their hands. Like, these guys were born to shoot the basketball. Drake Powell's not one of those, but he is absolutely learning to shoot the basketball. The guy who's kind of similar in that regard is a Jaylen Brown with the Celtics. Never a good shooter coming up through high school. Wasn't a good shooter at Cal, but look at him now. He's turned into a real shot maker for the Celtics now.
So obviously in the recruiting world and in fans, it's always what's next. It's like, cool, Drake Powell is top 20. Well, what's next for him? So in what areas, as you start, I guess the higher players ranked, the more you kind of have to nitpick to find things. What's the next step for him in his development?
Still continuing to develop that jump shot. But the one thing that I particularly really appreciate about Drake, and it goes to what you were saying that Sherrell has been pointing out, he's a Swiss Army knife. He's going to impact the game in any way he possibly can. And there's an awareness and a security about him where shots not falling. If I'm not scoring, I don't care. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. But it doesn't bother him. If the shot's not falling, he is going to impact the game any other way he possibly can. Again, he's a very good passer. I don't know if he gets appreciated enough for that. And then defensively, every time down the court, he is absolutely bringing it. So his ability to keep guys in front and also just to react. I got to watch him play Carter Bryant, 6'8", 6'9", extremely talented forward who can really make shots both off the catch and pull. That's what he does best. And Carter would drive him to the rim and just stop on a dime and rise up. And again, he has a high release, clean release. And by the time he's at the top of his jumper, Drake is already stopped and popped up and has a great contest on him and just really held him to limited points. So just stuff like that. He's going to impact the game in every single way. So next step in development is the jump shot. But if I see the shot not falling, and I've seen it plenty of times, and I wasn't at the YBL the second session, but I was following along with it, and it looked like that shot wasn't falling. But again, I'm keeping in touch with people who are watching them, and same thing. Everybody's just raving about the defensive ability.
I want to real quick before we move on, not to get too technical, but one thing I've noticed, and obviously I'm not a professional scout or anything, but it seems like his jumper is like all legs, because I described it to Joe. It was like he's on a trampoline and he gets so high that when he lands, usually you say you want to land in the same spot you jumped from to maintain, your mechanics and everything. But he gets so high, it's like he has to brace himself back onto the ground. Just wanted to see if you noticed that and how that can impact, the development of the shot.
I wouldn't say I've necessarily noticed it with him mechanically, but just a trend in terms of elite athletes. Every year, you can watch them in the NBA all the way down to grassroots, and we see it all the time. Elite athletes just have a hard time shooting the basketball because of that very reason. They just get so much pop off the ground. It's hard to kind of control, which is kind of weird to say because they're freak athletes. They should be able to control their bodies and all that stuff. But on those subtle movements, and especially when it comes to controlling for your balance and everything, when it comes to shooting a three-pointer, a lot of them struggle. They're historically at least streaky shooters. Very few are true certified high-level shooters. So haven't necessarily noticed it with him, but I mean, again, elite athlete, he's just kind of like a rubber band out there. I mean, he's just so quick and so much pop off the ground that, yeah, I mean, haven't noticed it with him, but just historically have very much noticed that with other players.
We've got Travis Branham, national recruiting analyst for 24/7 Sports, joining us. He had his fill of watching some hoops during both of the early live periods of this segment of the year. Travis is also a great guest because he got the memo about quarter zips tonight, and also I want to point out that he's wearing an Inside Carolina colored Peter Millar quarter zip, if my eyes are not deceiving me. So shout out to you for nailing that, sir. So let's move on to another commit for UNC right now. And the question still is he going to come into 20? Is he going to move into the 23 class, or is he going to stay in 24? It's Elliot Cadeau. And I know you've seen him multiple times. I feel like the highlight reel, Jason Kidd, Kendall Marshall type passing ability is what's jumping off of the video for a lot of folks from Elliot Cadeau and what we've seen from these live periods. But I'm also seeing a guy that's really comfortable taking it to the rack when he wants to. What's been your take on his offensive evolution, and how do you think that might translate to the next level whenever he gets there?
Yeah, I hadn't seen Elliot Cadeau all senior season. I didn't get a chance to see him at Link. So it had been about a year. And what immediately popped off to me was just how quick and explosive of a first step he has. He is so shifty. He changes gears and speeds and directions so fluidly, so quickly, keeps everybody off balance. And when you couple that with how dynamic he is as a ball handler, he keeps guys guessing and always keeps them guessing wrong. So he's just able to get wherever he wants on the court. Elite feel out of ball screens. To answer your first question, like if somebody jumped off, like you're asking who's the certified best player right now coming into college, it would absolutely be him. He can. I told our team this. He could go start a game for North Carolina tomorrow. I wouldn't have any reservations about that. He is just so heady, so skilled, elite vision, elite passer, sets the table for everybody around him. And then also he's improving as a shooter. Still got a ways to go, partially due to shot selection, but he's able to create separation, rise up and create from all three levels. But one thing I appreciate about him is just kind of like a lost art, or it's the old way, I guess. He's just a pass first guard. You don't see it often anymore. So very much appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, as high of a floor as they come in this class in terms of projecting for the collegiate level, and especially for immediate impact the year ahead.
That's high praise for the number of prospects that you lay eyes on an annual basis. I want to ask, I think one of the things a lot of North Carolina fans, specifically our subscribers at Inside Carolina, are asking about is how he will mesh with elite level talent around him. And I think, UNC's talent on the roster last year vacillated quite a bit, but I don't think there's any doubt that he's got a rock solid, All-American caliber post player in Armando Bacot coming back if he decides to reclass. And if he decides to come in with his 24 class and he ends up next to a guy like RJ Davis, who may still be in Chapel Hill either way, do you see him being able to play on the ball with someone else like an RJ Davis? And will Cadeau be better with better scorers and shooters around him?
Absolutely. I don't have any reservations with him fitting along with anybody. He's the type of guy that he's so smart, and like he's going to know his personnel around him, and he is going to try to figure out how to put them in spots and in situations that's going to make them better. So you don't have to worry about how's he going to fit. No, it's like he's going to just figure out who else is around him. You give the ball in his hands and he'll let him figure it out. Let him put them in the positions and find them in the right spots. So when it comes to RJ Davis, like if he were to come in or RJ is still there for his senior year, I have no issue about it. I would just personally, if I'm Hubert Davis, I would want Elliot Cadeau on the ball 100%. Let RJ Davis do what he does, and that's score the basketball. RJ has long been wired to do that. So let's let him do that and let Elliot set the table for him. So if even without it, Armando Bacot or anybody else, I really don't have any reservations with him. You having to find the right pairing alongside him. He's just going to figure it out, and he's going to elevate whoever it is around him.
So, Travis, my question is, it's more of a scenario. You are in charge of basketball, and guys do what you say. So they commit where you want them to commit, and you just have the juice, and everybody does what you say. Can you make a case, briefly, for why it's good for Elliot Cadeau to come in 2023, and why it also would be good for him to go in 2024? Like, make a case for both of them.
Reason it would be good for him to stay in 2023, frankly, or not stay in 23, to go in 2023. Like I said, he has the highest floor of anybody, probably, aside from Dylan Harper, probably the highest floor in terms of projecting for next year. Like if you were to reclassify either of them, they're going to start next year, play 30 minutes a game, put up numbers. You have no reservations. To that point, I don't know if he's going to get any better in high school. He's dominating every single game he goes out, averaging 11 assists on the EYBL circuit. What else does he need to do? I mean, he can improve his jumper, but I mean, you can start working on that next year. The game comes so slow to him at this point. What's the purpose of playing another year of high school basketball? You can make that jump. And also he's old for the class. He's ready. Physically, everything. He is ready to make that jump. Why should he stay in 2024? Frankly, it would only be roster personnel with this North Carolina team at this point. They've added a lot in the portal. You got RJ Davis coming back. Where does he fit into all of that? I don't know this personally. So the question is, has Hubert Davis told RJ Davis, has he told him, are you going to be running this? You're going to be running this team next year. You are my point guard. Has he told him that? So if you do that, can you bring if he's done that, then I don't see how you can bring Elliot Cadeau, because you bring in Elliot Cadeau and you're trying to keep him on the bench, you're going to have a really hard time keeping him on the bench in practice every single day, because he's going to be the best point guard from day one if he were to come to North Carolina anytime where RJ Davis is. So that to say, if he's promised RJ Davis, you're going to be my point guard, I don't see how you can bring Elliot Cadeau, because he's just going to win that position at the end of the day.
That's just such a stark change from what I think college basketball fans, even in the modern era, are used to, especially like kids like at North Carolina. It's just so rare for guys to come in at the point guard position and click. But again, you've seen this kid, you've seen a lot of kids, and that the high praise that you're laying on him is not to be taken with a grain of salt, at least for me. Let's move on to some of the 25 guys that currently hold offers from Hubert Davis and his staff. Isaiah Harwell, he's one that's been offered for quite some time. What did you see out of him in these first two live periods, and just where do you think he fits, or where do you think he projects with regard to a potential fit at North Carolina?
Yeah, so I actually got to watch him this past weekend. If I can remember correctly, Brad Frederick and Sean May were both on the court at the same time. They were watching him in multiple games this past weekend. As a player, 6'5" shot maker. It's all he wants to do is hunt jump shots. It's a good thing because he's such a polished shot maker, but it's also a bad thing because he has a tendency to settle for tough jump shots. You want to see it because he's 6'5", every bit of 195 pounds probably. He's got a great body, great frame. He's a good athlete. So playing at the high school level, you want to see him kind of be a bit more aggressive, a bit more physical and getting to the rim. But at the end of the day, talking about 6'5", very skilled, high IQ, instinctive shot maker on the wing. So how would he fit in North Carolina? I mean, doing just that. He's a guy that can get really hot and pour in points if that shot's falling. And if it's not, I mean, at the end of the day, you got a guy that's spotting up, coming off screens on the perimeter and spacing the floor for you, so everybody else can kind of go into the paint and whatever else. And he's going to be able to make the open shots. And again, with that tendency to hit the tough shots, that's where that streakiness kind of comes into play. If that shot's falling, he's going to be hot. And if it's not, you're just going to have to kind of allow him to space out off the floor and kind of have him hone in on just taking easy catch and shoot threes.
And just as a reminder, that's Isaiah Harwell, 2025 guard. He's actually from Idaho. We've been looked it up. I think there's been one player in North Carolina history on scholarship to be from Idaho. I think it was like in the 40s or something. So were he to eventually commit and enroll at UNC would be something very, very rare. So Travis, I just have one more question about a recruit. Obviously, Darren Peterson is a name that's been really hot the last couple of weeks. Had some tremendous performances. We were getting texts from people in the building last week just about how dominant he is. And I guess that's kind of my question, like how good is he and how good can he be? Because for so long, the 2025 class, you kind of talked about that top three, and then there was a drop off, but it seems like he could elevate himself into that conversation.
Which player? Sorry.
Darren Peterson.
Darren Peterson, yes. I mean, it's hard to gauge because what's so frustrating about the top three, or let's say the top two right now, and then you include Darren Peterson, in my opinion, you're looking at, he's the number 3 or 4 prospect in my opinion. And him, Cameron Boozer, and Cooper Flagg all play under 16s. It is so frustrating. None of them have any business playing at the under 16 level at this point. They are so unbelievably dominant, so advanced for that age group. It's silly to be playing at that level. I mean, Darren Peterson had 46 to one game this week, and the night before he had like 37. Like, what are we doing here? You're not at that point. You're not getting any better. These kids, I do get it. They want to play with their friends. Cooper Flagg, that's all his boys from Maine. Darren Peterson, these are all his boys he grew up with. Cameron Boozer, it's all his guys, and his high school coach even that's coaching that AAU team. So they have all these strong connections, but it's like when you're scoring 27 points a game and literally shooting 78% from the field, time for you to take it up a notch. So Darren Peterson, yes, dominant, extremely impressive, as physically gifted of a 16-year-old prospect, especially when you couple with how advanced he is with the skill set. Extremely impressive, dynamic, creating off the dribble, makes shots from all 3 levels, he's a good and talented passer. Obviously, he is much more wired to score than he is to create, but it's definitely in him that you can kind of continue to draw out. So to me, Darren Peterson, top 3, top 4 prospect as of this moment. I think another guy that we could see climb into that with him is Caleb Wilson out of Atlanta, Georgia. He is going to be a guy that is going to pop off, I think, as the spring and summer continue to roll on. He turned a lot of heads at the first CYBL session. He has made a massive jump in his development himself. So as this summer goes, I could see him kind of climbing into that conversation with Darren Peterson.
Yeah, that Drake Caleb Wilson game, this was the Saturday morning at EYBL. That was fun to watch because, again, 2 really, good players, one dynamic athlete, one still coming into his own, kind of like a deer out there, a little baby deer, just so tall and lanky. hitting incredible shots. That was definitely a fun watch.
Yeah, we like to use the term Clydesdale on roller skates here when we're talking about guys that are growing into themselves. And Travis, when you're talking about, guys that have elite skills at 16 years old, clearly you don't remember seeing Sherrell spitting at the Cross Creek Mall parking lot when he was a sophomore in high school, because I've seen that with my own eyes. I knew how that works. Last question before we let you get out of here. We're talking with Travis Branham, national recruiting analyst for 24/7 Sports. Sherrell wanted to hit you up with just some stuff about the portal, and I know you guys have done a lot of deep dives in that on your pod. So, Sherrell, I'll let you have the last one, man.
Yeah, it's more of a general question, and you can keep it brief because I know you could probably go on for 30 or 35 minutes. But like, just in the simplest terms, explain how wild the portal is and how different it has made what you do, especially after the Final Four and during this time period from what it used to be, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's definitely a crazy place. It's very hard to keep up with. Everything happens extremely, extremely fast. So you're always on your toes. You're working all day, every day. Um, I mean, basically the rumors and the stories you hear, I mean, most of them are, I would say, pretty close to accurate. The NIL deals, the alignment of destinations before you ever hit the portal, that's extremely common. I was talking to a coach just last weekend, and they're like talking about if I don't know that if basically if I have to ask about a player in the portal, I'm not going to be getting him, because if that deal's not done already, I have no shot because it's done elsewhere. So I mean, that's basically the way this thing operates. The one thing that I think is what's going to need to be addressed more than anything is with all this NIL stuff. So much power is held into people's hands that shouldn't be having the power of calling schools, hey, you want in on this kid, it's going to be this amount of NIL money, you know how it goes. And that shouldn't be the case. I think this is a conversation probably for another day, but something I keep talking about with a bunch of coaches and just people within the industry is, I think this is going to have to go towards a way where this stuff is actually written in the paper. Like, we got to have the paper trail. We got to be able to actually see and control the market a little bit better. Because right now you just got people lying, literally just calling and saying, "Hey, you can pay for this school's offering this amount of money," and that's just not true. But it's up to the other school to kind of counter, and it's just an inflated market. Also puts protection on the players. So they're put some contracts onto the table for these guys, sign them to 2-year deals, protects the player, protects the coach, also puts pressure on the coach. If I sign a kid to a $300,000 deal, he doesn't perform necessarily in year one, and I got him for a second year, and I got to pay him that money regardless. Now the pressure's on me to develop him. And also at the beginning of the stage, the pressure's on me to evaluate properly. Right now, there's not much value on properly evaluating guys. You take a bad player in the portal, you just shove them right back in the next year. So we've seen, gosh, I would have to go in and look at the transfer list, but I mean, there's hundreds of players who have already transferred and they're back into that portal. So there's a lot of problems with it. It's just an absolute chaotic situation going on in there, and every single situation's different. And that's not to say every situation's bad. There's obviously a lot of kids who needed new, fresh starts, or the opportunity wasn't there, and it's good for them to drop down a level. We see that all the time of kids who are getting recruited by high majors, and frankly, they should have gone mid-major all along. But there's a lot of good to it. There really is. But there's also just a lot of chaos with it. And I think you can bring a little bit more order that's going to be beneficial for the players and the coaches, everybody involved. So players aren't being promised a certain amount of money. They get to a school and that money's not there. That shouldn't be happening. That's just wrong. So yeah, it's just a hodgepodge, and that's why my answer is a hodgepodge.
No worries. I just looking at your face, I admire your candor as well as your restraint. It seemed like you wanted to go a little bit farther, but you also gave us enough that I think our audience will appreciate. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, man. Always enjoy coming on. And I actually think you have a good eye. I actually remember, I think I wore this the last time. So
I was
hopefully people
going to
don't
give
think
the
I'm
credit to
weird.
Bossy. No, I was going to give the credit to Bossy, but I just respect you tipping the cap to our listeners and our viewers because, again, it's we appreciate you heeding the dress memo when you jump on the show tonight.
Yeah,
so,
of course, man.
Travis Branham, national recruiting analyst for 24/7 Sports. Travis, where are we talking to you from? Where are you at right now?
I'm home right now. I'm finally made it back, and I'll
Where's
be
home
off
for
the
you?
road for Lexington, Kentucky.
Okay, that's
So.
right. I always Bossy's in Kansas, you're in Kentucky, we're in North Carolina. So we've got the blue blood corners of the earth covered. All right, brother,
Exactly.
get some rest. We'll talk to you next time, or at least sometime in the very near future. We appreciate you making time for us here on the Coast to Coast podcast on InsideCarolina.com.
Thanks, guys.